Hello and welcome to the project walkthrough for my client Brave Crab. I really wanted to share this with you so that you could see an actual full behind the scenes kind of final product of my brand strategy process and the framework that I obviously share within the brand bootcamp. So what you are looking at right now is the A to Z brand workshop, which is what I personally call it. My offer is called the A to Z brand experience. And just for a little bit of context, I actually do my workshop before I quote the project, and I know that's a little bit backwards. This is a process that I learned from Laura from Our Kind Studio. So if you do want to learn a little bit more about that particular process, I do recommend going over and checking out her Pitch Please course. It's not my kind of process to teach. However, obviously it is something I do, so I will kind of touch on it here and there, and you'll kind of see it within my process. But as I said, just for some context, this particular part of the process was all done before the client actually signed on to the full project, and I can kind of share a little bit about that as well. So this project is with a brand called Brave Crab, run by the lovely Vicky. When she came to me, she very much had this vision of starting this skincare aromatherapy focused brand. It very much is a startup business, so she has all of her products in formulation, but doesn't have kind of any kind of brand. She did have a little bit of a logo, but we kind of ended up scrapping that. And the kind of main mission behind this brand is the idea that it is for cancer patients undergoing treatment. So they suffer with a lot of kind of side effects to their skin as a result of the treatment. So this is a skincare / body care line that is going to help relieve some of those symptoms, but from a kind of aromatherapy perspective rather than a medical perspective. So I'm going to kind of dive into the workshop and kind of take you through page by page, talk you through some of the findings, and then we're going to kind of move into looking at the brand strategy guide and everything like that. So this is going to be a pretty long video, so sit down, grab a notebook if you want to, get ready to screenshot some bits and bobs here and there, because I know I always do that when I'm watching these kind of videos. Make sure you've got a nice drink and maybe a snack, and we will dive straight in. So I always get questions about kind of how I lay things out. So you can kind of see a bit of an overview here. So this is all within Adobe XD. I personally find this the easiest kind of application to be able to go in and do this with, because my client will essentially see what you're looking at right now on the screen, and then we can go in and kind of add notes and things like that. The workshop for me is very much a note-taking exercise. There are a couple of pages that I will kind of prepare in advance, and I will talk to you about that when we move on to them. But as you can see, we've also split this up into different sections. So we have the brand story and personality, we have audience, market, and then the creative vision. So I'm going to kind of zoom in. I will note as well, I do have like a full Notion page that has like all of my kind of questions and like outlines of the activities and things. This isn't something I'm sharing. However, I do recommend, once you've kind of gone through brand bootcamp, and also once you've kind of taken a look at this, kind of piecing together a document of your own that the client doesn't necessarily see, so that you can have all of your questions ready to go. You're probably not going to ask all of the questions, but it's there if you ever kind of get stuck, as a bit of a helping hand in the background. So I always start off by sharing a little bit about the agenda, what we're going to be doing, what the purpose of the workshop is with my client. So I always like to share kind of, we're going to talk about your brand story, we're going to talk about your mission, your customer, your market, etc. And this is why it's really important to your brand. Normally at this stage in the project, my clients already understand that brand strategy is a super important thing. I believe I talk about this a little bit in day 3, but we shouldn't be having to convince our clients, especially at this stage, that strategy is important. It's just more or less an overview of the things that we're going to be doing. My strategy workshops all in all take about 2 to 3 hours, which I know seems like a super long time, but I promise they whiz by. And I always say the most important thing is for them to put their trust in us and have confidence in the process. If they don't trust us, if they don't, trust that we're going to get those results for them, then there's already that block up. They've already got a wall up that's kind of guarding them from making this process work. So let's dive into brand story. So the thing that I always like to start with is looking at the founding story. Now, of course, at this point as well, the client has already filled in a questionnaire. So sometimes I will come in, I think I added in these 2 points before the session. Sometimes I just like to pull little bits out, and I may even write aside a couple of questions that are specifically linked into kind of diving deeper into their story. So the first thing I always like to establish is, what is the kind of origin story of their brand? What inspired them to create it? Was there a specific moment in their story that they feel like has really inspired this brand? I have written here as well, it's a brand's heart and soul. It adds depth and authenticity and helps us to foster genuine connection with your audience. And if any of you watching this have done my story brand workshop as well, you'll know how integral this is to crafting a compelling narrative. So for our particular client, she is a psychotherapist. She's been working in psychiatry and mental health for a very long time, but she wanted a new adventure. So she started learning about clinical aromatherapy, and she's been doing a big course, and a big part of that was volunteering at charities, and a lot of her clinical hours showed that she had experience with cancer patients. And she then witnessed firsthand kind of how challenging, how distressing, and how painful all of these side effects can be. And she felt like it was something that was really pushed aside and wasn't discussed enough. There was this unspoken expectation that you should be grateful to be alive and that you're receiving treatment, and, you know, it's only skin. And in that case, patients struggle to raise their issues and they sit with their problems rather than talking about the things that impact their well-being. And we kind of got onto this idea that as a brand, she really wanted to start raising these questions and having conversations about things that tend to be kind of looked past. So it kind of indicated we needed to have this sort of educational link, but more of a casual, calm, approachable, safe space and conversation rather than a kind of slap bang like leaflet in your face. So we can already start to piece together kind of why this brand is coming to light, and then we start digging deeper into some of these things even further. So we move into your brand. So for me, when I'm talking about this, I'm really looking at the goals and the visions of the brand. So where they want to take the brand in the future, kind of what the big vision is moving forward. That this was more than just a body care brand. It was really this kind of community of people that wanted to be brought together from kind of their struggles, and she wanted to create a real kind of safe space and community for people to engage with. And this kind of linked in with this fact that it's not just a beauty brand, it's a lot bigger than that. It includes a lot of kind of wellness elements to it. She wants to build like a retreat eventually, like a spa style retreat where people can go with their families and just kind of almost shut off from the outside world, but also feel really grounded with nature. And also kind of the idea of launching additional ranges in the future for different kind of conditions and different age ranges and things like that. So this kind of started to open us up to the fact that it's a lot bigger. You know, this is a wellness brand. It's not just a skincare brand, which gave us a lot to work with, and a very kind of different take on kind of how we would design the brand. Because obviously when you're just designing kind of packaging for a skincare brand, you're thinking kind of very... not tunnel visioned, that's not the right word, but you're kind of very focused on that rather than kind of looking at the bigger picture. Whereas this one, we really needed to make sure that anything we designed in the future was going to be able to link back with the brand. So there were lots and lots of different things. I won't go through kind of everything on every page, but I will kind of like cover the key takeaways, if you will. So then we move into the core values. So obviously brand values is something that we talk about a lot. It is a very kind of surface level kind of strategy theory that a lot of us will do. But when we're talking about core values, I really like to think about what the brand's holding close, what their values and beliefs are. And this really then helps to shape every single interaction and decision, setting the tone for authentic connections with your dream customers. So we have this kind of idea that was brought through from the questionnaire of when your skin is feeling better, you are feeling better, and this then impacts on your mood and your well-being, which then increases your capacity to cope with treatment or help you to engage in the things that feel really important in your life. So it was really important that we were creating this uplifting, optimistic kind of environment that allowed them to feel their struggles, but also made them feel good while we were doing it. really bringing in comfort and care, having a very non-taboo approach to discussing the cancer treatment, so not making people feel like they need to kind of hide away their side effects and things like that. Creating safe spaces, obviously we've already kind of discussed that. And yeah, so shifting people emotionally. So this was kind of our main value that we were really exploring. So transporting them to a place from a negative headspace to a positive one, giving them an experience that they feel really excited by. So then we look at brand experience. So we've already started to look at kind of the vision and the goals of the brand and what they find important. But now we need to look at kind of how they're going to start interacting with their customers. So how are people interacting with your brand? What are their opinions? What are their thoughts? What is their perception? So we're kind of starting to think about how we can create a holistic experience that people really want to be a part of, rather than just a brand that has a good product. So we really wanted to kind of make people feel like they're using their usual skincare routine and they're really enjoying the process. So we didn't want to kind of the takeaways from this is that we didn't want to almost scream that this is a product for cancer patients. We wanted to give them a sense of normalcy. We wanted to give them their normal routine back, but with products that are safe to use on their skin with the right pH levels and things like that. So we want to give them their normal routine, just something that is appropriate for their skin. Something that's not medical or clinical. It's a brand that they can really indulge in, again, rather than being a product for someone with cancer. So this kind of led us into thinking about this luxurious experience. So the routine that they would kind of, go up and run a nice bath, and they would have all of these lovely products that they were actually able to use for their skin, and just provided a sense of normalcy. Help someone to feel more uplifted and looked after, a sense of care from beginning to end, so a real attention to detail, which then also kind of played in with this luxurious experience. So we're really kind of packaging to the product, and we're going to kind of have different stories and things like that. And this attention to detail was a really, really important thing when I was starting to build the brand, which I will talk to you about more in detail when we kind of get to that stage. Yeah, a sense of normality, a relief and calmness. So we want them to almost have that weight taken off their shoulders, that they know that they've been considered and that they're being cared for, and that also they're going to get results from these products. The dermatitis that they might be experiencing on their skin is going to be massively helped. One less thing for them to worry about. So we're already starting to kind of think about our audience here and think about those pain points as well. Now, this is one of my favorite exercises, which I'm sure you know about, which is the my brand is, my brand isn't. And this is where we're really looking to think about kind of the adjectives that we want to use to describe the brand. I always try and stay away from very obvious, almost descriptive words about what the brand does. So things like sustainable, and obviously these words do come up, but we want to really sit with the client and spend a while and talk to them about exactly what the kind of personality of their brand is. What are the specific kind of adjectives and description words that are coming forward that describe the feeling that they emulate. So for this particular brand, we have comforting, supportive, courageous, nurturing and maternal, genuine and authentic, heartfelt, honest, reliable. We've got honest in there twice. Transparent, impactful, accessible, caring and attentive. The brand isn't, normally we have a little bit more for this, but we were actually struggling a little bit with this one. But my brand isn't medical, artificial or superficial, forceful, salesy and trendy. So we're really wanting to play more into the idea of it feeling like a warm hug. We're creating this luxurious experience. Again, as you can see, luxury isn't on here because that's normally something that describes what the brand is rather than how it feels. But we are trying to create that luxurious, attentive, close to detail, and you will see all of this come through as we move into the concepts. I always get asked as well about how I bring archetypes into my brand workshops, and this is exactly how I like to provide a small description of each archetype. And I will basically get my client to sit down and read through them and kind of pick out the ones that they feel like relate to them the most. And I will obviously already probably have one in mind as well. So for this particular brand, we actually picked out a few. We had the hero, the creator, the magician, the sage, and the caregiver. And ultimately we decided on the caregiver, who is an archetype that protects and cares for others. They're compassionate, nurturing, and generous. And this just really made sense for us. So we just have a very small conversation about which one they fit into, and then we do a little bit more exploring about that that later on. And obviously the archetype can really, really influence how we are designing the brand as well. Okay, so we're moving into audience now, which is normally my favorite section. This is normally the section of the workshop that takes up the most time, because this normally is something that, like mission and values and things like that, are things that the client has normally already thought of. And they probably already have thought of audience as well, but it's normally more surface level. They would normally think, okay, my client or my customer gets up to this on the weekend. They like to do yoga on the weekend. They're a 40-something-year-old woman with 2 kids. And we rarely dig deeper into the things that actually matter, which are the consumer habits. How aware are they of your brand, and all of this kind of stuff, which we're going to dive into now. So first off, as you probably know, I always am a big believer in that a brand never has just one audience. They always have 2 or more. Normally we come up with 3. In this case, we had 2, and these were very, very clear and very, very obvious. So for this particular brand, we had the wellness seeker. So this is the cancer patient themselves. They're predominantly women who are going to be purchasing this particular brand. They're aged 30 to 55. So very much kind of looking at those demographics rather than psychographics. I lost my train of thought then. People that look outside of medical professionals for solutions, so they're more open-minded and more proactive. We kind of grouped these kind of cancer patients into 2 groups. We have the group that kind of hand everything over to their medical team and very much take the lead of their doctors and their kind of medical planning and very much lean to the clinical side and sort of do what they're told. And then there are some other people that are a little bit more wellness focused, who are maybe open to alternative solutions. They look outside of, medical solutions, and we'll kind of dig into a little bit more about that in objections. But we kind of identified this as our target audience. So they also are most likely people that do care for their skin. They probably have a skincare routine outside of everything that's going on. We then have the carer. So this is the friend, family member, partner of the person who is going through the treatment. They normally want to do something caring or loving for their loved one to show them that they're thinking about them. They can often feel a little bit helpless and wanting to find some kind of thoughtful solution that might make a difference. They're quite emotionally intelligent, so they're most likely female, basically, somebody that is going to actively think, what can I do to make this person feel better? So a daughter, a friend, a sister. And obviously these people are also going to be big purchasers of this brand. They're going to be going out there and looking for gifts and things like that. However, we ultimately decided that the wellness seeker is our calling it our dream customer felt a little bit wrong in this instant, so we changed it to ideal customer, but normally we do call them like our dream customer, because we wouldn't wish anybody to be in this situation, so we called them our ideal customer. Normally I do throw a little picture in here as well, but I didn't for this case. So our ideal customer is the wellness seeker. We gave her a name, she's Molly. And we always start off with their story. So thinking about their background, who they are, what's their personality, who are they like as a person. And generally what happens when we're doing strategies, we stop here. And there's so much more to explore, which obviously I'll dive into. So normally when we're going through this process, I will put the bits in bold that I feel like are really key facts and that will really influence some decisions in the strategy. So we had the fact that she's feeling really overwhelmed. Her diary is full of appointments and she's visiting lots of hospitals, and it's a big mental burden, something to go through. So this was a really, really important kind of fact that we eventually ended up taking into the packaging. So for example, what this told me was that, if our customer is feeling really overwhelmed, then we need to provide them with a simple solution. If we have, this particular brand has a product range currently of 6 products. We needed to make it feel like an easy choice. We needed to not overwhelm the packaging with a load of jargon or with just a bunch of information. It needed to feel more minimalistic but thoughtful and luxurious at the same time. And we needed the brand to not feel like it was pushing something onto people. Like, there were lots of things that we could learn for this that then eventually informed design decisions. We also had this idea that she's very good at looking after other people, so she doesn't always feel comfortable asking for or receiving help, which is why, again, we didn't want to make it super obvious that it was a product for cancer patients, although we did have to link it in there very carefully, so that, you know, if somebody buys them it as a gift, it feels like a gift, not a, oh, I found this, you know, thing for cancer patients. So that was really important as well. Next, we move into customer values. So this is looking at, obviously we've done our brand's core values, but what are the things that our customer cares about? What are the things that bring them joy? And we always try and link it in with the context of their current experience with what leads them to buy this brand. So obviously with this particular brand, we have a very significant kind of experience that our customers are going through that is going to lead them to purchasing this brand. So we looked at it in the context of that experience. So one of the things that we were looking